Zen master and Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh passed away this past, what would have been our time, would have been Friday. And so this morning we're going to have a kind of simple memorial service and offer the merit of our practice to Thich Nhat Hanh's spirit as it transitions. Before we do that, I wanted to read a couple of things from Thich Nhat Hanh's community called Plum Village about his life and their announcement about his passing. And then also, and I'd like this kind of the shape of his life we could see from an external perspective. And then I'd like to share something about Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching that was so important to me. And then like to open it up to the community for people to share if there are things that that you received from Thich Nhat Hanh or through Thich Nhat Hanh that became important to you. And so spend a little bit of time sharing like that, and then have the ceremony. So I thought I'd start by on the Plum Village website, which I encourage you all to visit, and it does say here some of the information. There's 5 days of ceremonies that are happening now in Vietnam, where Thich Nhat Hanh had been for the past several years after having a stroke, and so you can go there and join in. They're recorded so you can see things, but it's also live, so things are happening around the clock over these 5 days, and you can join in. There's a lot of resources for learning about him and his life and his teachings, and the community that he's developed. And so this is from the website. It's called The Life Story of Thich Nhat Hanh. It's not very long. I think it's important for us to get a feeling for who this person is. Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh is a global spiritual leader, poet, and peace activist, renowned for his powerful teachings and best-selling writings on mindfulness and peace. A gentle, humble monk, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called him an apostle of peace and nonviolence when nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Exiled from his native Vietnam for almost 4 decades, Thich Nhat Hanh has been a pioneer, bringing Buddhism and mindfulness to the West and establishing an engaged Buddhist community for the 21st century. Born in central Vietnam in 1926, Thich Nhat Hanh entered Tu don't know how to pronounce Vietnamese, Tu Hieu Temple in Hue City as a novice monk at the age of 16. As a young monk in the early 1950s, he was actively engaged in the movement to renew Vietnamese Buddhism. He is one of the first monks to study a secular subject at university in Saigon, and one of the first 6 monks to ride a bicycle. When war came to Vietnam, monks and nuns were confronted with the question of whether to adhere to the contemplative life and stay meditating in the monasteries, or to help those around them suffering under the bombings and turmoil of war. Thich Nhat Hanh was one of those who chose to do both, and in doing so, founded the Engaged Buddhism movement, coining the term in his book, Vietnam Lotus in a Sea of Fire. His life has since been dedicated to the work of inner transformation for the benefit of individuals and society. In 1961, Thich Nhat Hanh traveled to the United States to teach comparative religion at Princeton University, and the following year went on to teach and research Buddhism at Columbia University. In Vietnam, in the early 1960s, Thich Nhat Hanh founded the School of Youth and Social Service, a grassroots relief organization of 10,000 volunteers based on the Buddhist principles of nonviolence and compassionate action. As a scholar, teacher, and engaged activist in the 1960s, Thich Nhat Hanh also founded the Van Han Buddhist University in Saigon, La Boy Publishing House, and an influential peace activist magazine. In 1966, he established the Order of Interbeing, a new order based on the traditional Buddhist Bodhisattva precepts. On May 1st, 1966, at Tu Hieu Temple, Thich Nhat Hanh received the lamp transmission from Master Chang Tat. A few months later, he traveled once more to the United States and Europe to make the case for peace and to call for an end to hostilities in Vietnam. It was during this 1966 trip that he first met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1967. As a result of this mission, both North and South Vietnam denied him the right to return to Vietnam, and he began a long exile for 39 years. Thich Nhat Hanh continued to travel widely, spreading the message of peace and brotherhood, lobbying Western leaders to end the Vietnam War, and leading the Buddhist delegation to the Paris peace talks in 1969. He also continued to teach, lecture, and write on the art of mindfulness and living peace, and in the early 1970s was a lecturer and researcher in Buddhism at the University of Sorbonne, Paris. In 1975, he established the Sweet Potato Community near Paris, and in 1982 moved to a much larger site in the southwest of France, soon to be known as Plum Village. Under Thich Nhat Hanh's spiritual leadership, Plum Village has grown from a small rural farmstead to what is now the West's largest and most active Buddhist monastery, with over 200 resident monastics and over 10,000 visitors every year, who come from around the world to learn the art of mindful living. Plum Village welcomes people of all ages, backgrounds, and faiths at retreats where they can learn practices such as walking meditation, sitting meditation, eating meditation, total relaxation, working meditation, and stopping, smiling, and breathing mindfully. These are all ancient Buddhist practices, the essence of which Thich Nhat Hanh has distilled and developed to be easily and powerfully applied to the challenges and difficulties of our times. In the last 20 years, over 100,000 people have made a commitment to follow Thich Nhat Hanh's modernized code of universal global ethics in their daily life, known as the 5 mindfulness trainings. More recently, Thich Nhat Hanh has founded Wake Up, a worldwide movement of thousands of young people training in these practices of mindful living, and he has launched an international Wake Up Schools website program training teachers to teach mindfulness in schools in Europe, America, and Asia. Thich Nhat Hanh is also an artist, and his unique and popular works of calligraphy, short phrases and words capturing the essence of his mindfulness teachings, have since 2010 been exhibited in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Canada, Germany, France, and New York. In the last decade, Thich Nhat Hanh has opened monasteries in California, New York, Vietnam, Paris, Hong Kong, Thailand, Mississippi, and Australia, and Europe's first Institute of Applied Buddhism in Germany. Mindfulness practice centers in the Plum Village tradition offer special retreats for business people, teachers, families, healthcare professionals, psychotherapists, politicians, and young people, as well as war veterans and Israelis and Palestinians. It is estimated that over 75,000 people participate in activities led by Plum Village monks and nuns worldwide every year. In recent years, Thich Nhat Hanh led events for members of U.S. Congress, for parliamentarians in the UK, Ireland, India, and Thailand. He has addressed the World Parliament of Religions in Melbourne and UNESCO in Paris, calling for specific steps to reverse the cycle of violence, war, and global warming. On his visit to the U.S. in 2013, he led high-profile mindfulness events at Google, the World Bank, and the Harvard School of Medicine. On 11 November 2014, a month after his 88th birthday, and following several months of rapidly declining health, Thich Nhat Hanh suffered a severe stroke. Although he was unable to speak and was mostly paralyzed on the right side, he continued to offer the Dharma and inspiration through his peaceful, serene, and valiant presence. In November 2018, Thich Nhat Hanh moved to Tu Hui Temple in Vietnam, where he ordained with his teacher when he was 16 years old. He expressed a wish to stay there for his remaining days. He came out regularly in his wheelchair to visit the temple altars and to lead the Sangha on walking meditation around the ponds and ancestral stupas. Thay's return to Tu Hui was a bell of mindfulness, reminding us all of how precious it is to belong to a spiritual lineage with deep roots. Whether we have attended a retreat or simply read one of Thay's books or watched a talk and have been touched by his teachings, we all are connected to this ancestral stream of wisdom and compassion. This is the announcement from their community. Dear beloved community, with a deep mindful breath, we announce the passing of our beloved teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, at 1:30 hours on January 22nd, 2022, at Tu Hu Temple in Hue, Vietnam, at the age of 95. Thay has been the most extraordinary teacher, whose peace, tender compassion, and bright wisdom has touched the lives of millions. Whether we have encountered him on retreats, at public talks, or through his books and online teachings, or simply through the story of his incredible life, we can see that Thay has been a true bodhisattva, an immense force for peace and healing in the world. Thay has been a revolutionary, a renewer of Buddhism, never diluting and always digging deep into the roots of Buddhism to bring out its authentic radiance. Thay has opened up a beautiful path of engaged and applied Buddhism for all of us, the path of the 5 mindfulness trainings and the 14 mindfulness trainings of the Order of Interbeing. As Thay would say, because we have seen the path, we have nothing more to fear. We know our direction in life, we know what to do and what not to do to relieve suffering in ourselves, in others, and in the world. And we know the art of stopping, looking deeply, and generating true joy and happiness. Now is a moment to come back to our mindful breathing and walking, to generate the energy of peace, compassion, and gratitude to offer our beloved teacher. It is a moment to take refuge in our spiritual friends, our local sanghas and community, and each other. We invite you to join our global community online as we commemorate Thay's life and legacy with 5 days of practice and ceremonies broadcast live from the Hue Temple and Plum Village, France, starting on Saturday, January 22nd. There will also be in-person and live ceremonies hosted by Deer Park Monastery in California and other practice centers in our tradition, as well as recitations of the 5 and 14 mindfulness trainings. Please reach out to your local practice center or sangha for more information. Let us each resolve to do our best over the coming days to generate the energy of mindfulness, peace, and compassion to send our beloved teacher. Over the coming hours on the Plum Village website, we will publish some inspirational chants, texts, and mindfulness practice resources to support you to come together with your local sanghas to generate a collective energy of mindfulness and compassion and create your own ceremony or session in tribute to our teacher. As Thay has always taught, nothing is more important than brotherhood and sisterhood, and we all know the power of collective energy. With love, trust, and togetherness, the monks and nuns of Plum Village, France. Just curious, how many people have read or heard some teachings from Thich Nhat Hanh? Most people. I remember before I was ordained in my early 20s, I went on pilgrimage in Japan around an island called Shikoku. And there's very few things we could carry with us because we were walking many miles a day, maybe 20 miles a day. But I had the copy of Thich Nhat Hanh's book on the Heart Sutra. And at that time, the internet was not so, it wasn't so easy to get translations of things. And we used that translation from his book as we went to all of the 88 temples that surround that island, and we chanted, because we wanted to chant the Heart Sutra, but we wanted to chant in English and in Japanese. So that was the only translation that we have, and it's why I had brought the book with me. But when I think about what I've received from Thich Nhat Hanh and through his teachings, it goes back to something that was mentioned here in the letter from the monks and nuns of Plum Village, although he was an incredible popularizer of Buddhist teaching, his depth of expression is like rivaled by no one. His ability to be able to take this most profound Buddhist teachings and to express them very directly in a way that people could receive and understand what the teaching was offering them. I think he is, the pinnacle of that capacity. And so, while I had that book with me just to read, or to chant, I began to read it. And when I look at my life over, the following 30 years now, I can see that his invitation to the Prajnaparamita teachings, to the simple depth of what it means to look at the world with those eyes, I can see that it was contained in that. And I went to look for my copy of that book this morning because there was a quote I wanted to read from it. But I have bought and given that book away so many times, and then I remembered I gave the last copy I bought, I gave away a couple months ago. So I have to get another one. But to paraphrase, I remember the one that something he said that just entered me and changed my life. Is when he said, "Do you see the tree? For that tree simply to be the tree is totally important for me to be me." And the reason I thought that teaching is so important is because we have so much spiritual teaching that say, see the tree and you are not really separate. You should all feel one with the tree, which you should, that's important. But he said it the opposite way. He said, because the tree is simply the tree, I can simply be me. And that is, to me, this like a profound truth of the Prajnaparamita teachings, which he presented in such a simple way that's really affected my life. So is there anyone else who would like to share anything that came in your life, his teaching? And maybe, and anyone online too, you can, Joichi's watching there. If you have something to share, he'll raise your hand or something and he'll get you on.
Can you hear through this? Okay. My sister, who lives in New York City, has been a devoted follower of Thich Nhat Hanh for a long time. And she saw him in person in New York City. Oh, it's been probably 15 years ago. I can't really remember. But she shared a story about that talk that has stayed with me, and I often share it with patients at the hospital. There were questions from the audience, and one of them was an older man who had been a soldier in Vietnam, an American soldier in Vietnam. And he said to Thich Nhat Hanh, I killed children in Vietnam. I killed so many children in Vietnam. What do I do? And he sat there for a minute and he didn't emote anything. All he said was, the way my sister explained it, well, you killed these children. Now, how many children can you save? And that was all he said. And that really stuck with me. And I share that with patients all the time who share their suffering. Then, like, okay, now, what can you give back? What can you do to help others? I think that's really, really important. Thanks.
Hello, this is Yutong bowing in. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak and for dedicating time to Thay. I wanted to share briefly how important he is and the Plum Village tradition has been for me in my transformation. I admit that years ago, when I had first become a practitioner, I was a bit of a hungry ghost. And I remember looking online for a meditation timer, complete beginner. And I came across Plum Village videos, and they would talk about how the sound of the bell had saved their life. And what's embarrassing for me to admit is that I remember becoming very angry and thinking, no one is that happy. No one, what are these people trying to sell me? What's a retreat center? You know, like what is this? You know, what are they trying to trick me into? You know? But because of the Plum Village tradition and their monks and nuns and the teacher and Thay's voice and their sort of what I would call a relentless, gentle and kind demeanor, my walls, you know, have completely melted, and my heart has opened up in a way that I have difficulty being able to express. And it really, really allowed me to take my practice beyond a very closed idea of what Zazen was. And so thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share how important his teachings are to me. Thank you so much. It's good to see you all again. You tone bowing out.
I'll say this. Thich Nhat Hanh was part of the process that saved my life. When I first found Buddhism and some teachings by him, I was in a treatment center, and he had given an interview, and I almost want to say it was with Oprah or something like this. And he was talking about how to relate to somebody when they're suffering. And he had these 4 sayings about, darling, I see you, and all this stuff, right? And I just loved the way his voice just like calmed my soul, you know? And so I took those 4 sayings and I would just do this like writing meditation whenever I felt like I was suffering. And it just really helped, and it was part of my whole journey into Buddhism, and part of the process that saved my life. So I'll always be grateful to him for that.
I was in Vietnam in the early part of the war and got hurt. And the next thing, the thing I heard about Thich Nhat Hanh was I believe he was there when his brother set himself on fire and burned. And I thought that, wow, you know, that's really heavy. And I didn't become a Buddhist at that point. But I think what he did is he connected us to the earth. And since I've heard him passing, one of the things that he said is walk slowly, walk on the earth, and walk and realize you're walking on the earth. And I've been doing that ever since I learned yesterday that he passed. He was a wonderful teacher.
For me, kind of the biggest thing that I've learned from Thich Nhat Hanh has been the idea of simplicity. A lot of my suffering has come from more and more and more, and scarcity and never enough. And just his simplicity. There is something I say every morning when I wake up of his, and it's just such a simple, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful words. He says, every morning I wake up, I smile. 24 brand new hours are before me. I want to live fully in each moment and to look at all beings through eyes of compassion. And that, you know, to me, makes me want to cry. That just that sums up, you know, just in those 4 simple lines, like how I want to live my life, you know, and in that simple manner of just, you know, coming from loving kindness. And you know, if when you can live that way, you don't need anything else. So thank you.
you are, in one of the Dharma talks, you talked about setting up our own altar. And so I had already had an altar, but it wasn't, it became more of a regular practice form after you encouraged us to do that. And so I had a little book of Thich Nhat Hanh's Got This. And you reminded me of that I've been using those in the morning as part of my ceremony. And he was the first thing I ever heard about Buddhism.
Long before I came to practice, or even thought of Buddhism as any part of my life, I studied Thich Nhat Hanh's life as an activist, and at this time in my own life, activism and social justice were my primary practice, I'd say, and I had this image of such a force, like a being that was just sort of like took no shit and was just like, that's the image you get when you read about his activism in Vietnam. And the first time I heard him speak on a podcast or something, he talked about the place where ferocity and gentleness meet. And it completely changed how I thought about this work towards justice, or this work towards equity, that the gentle and the ferocious are not at odds, but they are rooted in this deep place, and that has changed the direction of so much of my life.
I specifically have always appreciated his term interbeing. I think it's just such an example of the way that he could put things so clearly and concisely. And softness has always been a challenge for me, and he is so unabashedly loving and kind, and in a way that often was difficult for me at first, like darling and things. I should be like, ah! But what a beautiful, liberating, juicy exploration of the Dharma. It's just miraculous.
I encourage everyone, whether you've, was there someone online? Whether you've enjoyed the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh up until now and received from them, or you haven't, to make some time to connect with them. And the Plum Village website is a really good place to go to find out about all kinds of things. There's a lot of resources there in terms of teachings, but also the opportunity to connect with the worldwide celebration of his life and dedication of merit to him through this transition. And if you do have a practice at home of offering incense at an altar or those kind of things, to write his name or get a little picture of him and put on the altar is traditional for 49 days to make special commemoration of someone, and particularly for such a profound teacher for our age. If you feel called to do that, that is a very kind of appropriate type of activity, and you'll be joined by really many, many thousands of people around the world who are also doing the same thing. As we do that kind of simple ritual, the gateway that we can see open as a person is transitioning. We are making an offering, but that gateway also is a gateway that we receive something through. So this is why we take we make so much effort to make offerings when a person is in transition like this, because it reveals something that can't be revealed in any other way. So this morning, I will leave the hall here in a moment, and we will have a collective practice in our own style to then offer to Thich Nhat Hanh. So there'll be a recitation of a couple of sutras. The verse of the lifespan is one of them, and the other is the Dai Hishin Dharani, the Dharani of the Great Compassionate Heart. And then during the Great Compassionate Heart Dharani, you'll all be welcome to come up and to make an incense offering to Thich Nhat Hanh's pictures here on the altar. And then there'll be dedication of merit, and that will close our services for this morning.
the lives that
Incalculable hundreds, thousands, myriads, and millions.
birth and death give way to each other, that cold and heat vary reciprocally. They come like lightning flashing in a vast sky. They go like waves calming on a great sea. At midnight on the 22nd day of this month, at his home temple in Hue, Thừa-Thiên-Huế, Vietnam, the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh entered perfect nirvana. After 95 years, the karmic conditions supportive of bodily life have been exhausted, and his ordained lifespan has come to pass. Understanding the impermanence of all things, he gracefully takes to nirvana with ease. Now entering into the samadhi of supreme illumination, he rends the darkness in the 10 directions. Pouring clear water into the vast ocean and further adorning his path of great awakening, let us together recite the 10 names of Buddha. Compassionate heart, Dharani, and the 10 names of Buddha. And having made offerings of light, incense, flowers, sweet water, tea, and cookies, we dedicate the merit to the awakened spirit of the great teacher of our age, the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, that it may adorn his sublime entrance into perfect nirvana. May this merit bring further clarity and vigor to his spiritual descendants, and may the Buddhas and ancestors nourish the firelight of his Dharma heritage so that it burns brightly throughout the 10 directions. Reflecting on his bodily life, May we touch the immensity of his great vow and understand the depth of his generosity to living beings everywhere. With boundless gratitude in our hearts, may we deeply realize the womb of wisdom, carry out the path of compassion, and together with all beings realize the Buddha way.